I bought the house at the edge of Willow Creek to escape people. After 20 years working in project management, buried in deadlines and noise, I wanted nothing more than silence, trees, and the sound of running water outside my window. The little house I found was perfect. Cedar siding, stone chimney, a wraparound porch overlooking the creek. Best of all, it came with a footbridge that crossed to a private island of trees. Something the realtor called a rare feature grandfathered into the deed. I closed on it in cash, pulling from savings I had promised myself I wouldn't touch until retirement. But I figured peace was worth it. On my first morning there, I woke to birdsong instead of traffic, brewed coffee, and carried a box of books onto the porch. That's when I saw them. 3 people walking across my footbridge like they owned it. The woman in front wore a crisp navy suit and carried a folder under her arm. Behind her, a man in khakis was scribbling on a clipboard, and another woman in yoga gear trailed with a phone raised, recording. They stepped onto my porch as if I had invited them. "You must be Mr. Reed," the woman said. Her voice was sweet but sharp, like sugar dusting over glass shards. "I'm Marjorie Klein, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. We need to address your bridge." "My bridge," I corrected. But she plowed ahead, opening her folder to show laminated documents. "According to our covenants, this structure qualifies as a community easement. Residents must have access for walking and recreation. Your predecessor was granted temporary allowance, but that ends with the transfer of ownership. You'll need to remove the private sign and agree to the community pass system immediately." The man with the clipboard, her compliance officer, smirked as he added, "Failure to comply results in fines. $50 a day to start." I stared at them, coffee cooling in my hand. "Do you have a deed that proves the bridge belongs to the HOA? Marjorie hesitated. She flipped pages, produced copies so fuzzy the text was barely legible, then launched into talk about covenant interpretations. "No deed. No county records. Nothing binding." I pulled out my phone and started recording. Her smile twitched. "That won't be necessary," she said. "It is for me," I replied. They left in a tight cluster, whispering. I watched them cross back to the other side of the creek, and for the first time since moving in, I wondered if I had made a mistake. The next morning, a knock rattled my door at 6 a.m. The clipboard man, Gary, handed me 3 citations, printed in Comic Sans with clip art borders. Unauthorized signage, failure to register waterway access, non-compliance with community integration protocols. Each came with fines that doubled weekly. When I asked where these protocols were written, Gary tapped his briefcase and walked away. Neighbors who had smiled at me on moving day now avoided eye contact. Conversations on porches hushed when I passed. The isolation was worse than noise. It felt orchestrated. That afternoon, I dug through the deed and survey maps. Something caught my eye, a reference to an exclusive right-of-way structure over water, constructed 1972. It didn't use the word bridge, but it lined up perfectly. My property boundary extended further than Marjorie claimed. I walked along the creek bank and found an old iron stake half buried in weeds. Carved into its rusted surface were symbols: a compass rose, a key, and a small triangle. They matched a brass key the seller had left me with a cryptic note: "You'll figure out what it's for." Later, I ran into Walter, an elderly man who had lived in Willow Creek since it was built. He leaned close, voice low. "They've been pulling this stunt for years, claiming docks, gardens, anything they can twist into a community amenity. Your predecessor, Mrs. Hanlon, fought them off. They hated her for it. I asked if anyone had taken them to court. He shook his head. Most give in, too tired to fight, too scared of being ostracized. That night, an envelope slid under my door. Block letters on plain paper: sell or regret it. The following morning, both tires of my truck were slashed. The sheriff came but shrugged. Civil dispute, he said. Work it out with your HOA. The message was clear. I was on my own. I called a friend from college, now an attorney. I sent her scans of my deed and the cryptic clause about the right-of-way. 2 days later, she called back, excitement in her voice. You're sitting on exclusive easement rights. That bridge is yours alone. They can't touch it. Armed with that, I decided hiding wouldn't help. If Marjorie wanted to claim my bridge as a community amenity, I'd show the community the truth. On Saturday, I hosted an open bridge event. I strung lanterns across the railings, set up a grill on the island, and invited everyone, except Marjorie and Gary. Kids ran across the bridge laughing. Families fished from the bank. And for the first time, my property felt alive in the right way. Neighbors began venting. A single mom named Tasha said the HOA fined her for storing a kayak beside her porch. An older couple complained they'd paid thousands for creek restoration fees that never materialized. Rumors swirled about Marjorie pocketing funds. When Gary appeared at the edge of the woods snapping photos of us, people saw him for what he was, a watchdog, not a neighbor. The next morning, an official notice arrived. Mandatory inspection, unauthorized gathering, safety violations. At the meeting in the clubhouse, Marjorie presided at a long table stacked with binders. Gary manned an easel with diagrams. They accused me of obstructing navigation, endangering residents, even undermining property values. Their lawyer threatened court action if I didn't sign over access rights immediately. When they finished, I stood, calm, methodical. I laid out original deeds with county seals and notarized signatures. I explained exclusive easements in plain English. Then I produced a recent survey showing my property boundaries extended under the creek bed itself. "Does your claim cover the land beneath the water?" I asked the lawyer. He faltered. "No, only surface rights." "Exactly," I said, and placed a final document on the table, a transfer showing that, in addition to my property, Mrs. Hanlon had quietly sold me ownership of the creek island and submerged land. The HOA had been paying insurance premiums to cover it, money funneled through misclassified expenses. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone began recording on their phone. Gary blurted, "You said no one would find those files." The room erupted. Residents demanded explanations about missing funds, about years of fines and fees. Tasha stood and shouted, "You made me choose between groceries and paying your bogus penalties." Marjorie tried to call for order, but the crowd had turned. Within a week, she resigned. Gary, too. An audit revealed over $100,000 siphoned into administrative consulting. The county prosecutor filed charges for embezzlement and harassment. Walter was elected interim president and immediately rewrote the bylaws with community input. This time, transparency mattered. As for me, I kept the bridge private in ownership, but open in spirit. Residents could cross with my permission, free of fees, as long as they respected the land. Kids played tag on the island, families picnicked, and the water finally felt like what I had wanted when I moved here. Peace. Sometimes I stand at the middle of the bridge at sunset, the brass key in my pocket, the carved stake glinting faintly through the grass. I think about how close I came to giving up, to selling out of fear. The HOA wanted control, but what mattered wasn't control at all. It was care, stewardship, passing something intact to those who came next. The creek runs on, whispering under the bridge, and I stand guard, not for myself alone, but for the truth that nearly slipped away.